Here we are. Your boy here is not in a good mood, and it's only partly because of all the dead kids. It's mostly because I still have not figured out the audio issues here with StreamYard. So I apologize to our audience, our beautiful, wonderful, faithful listeners who have been amazing for more than 2 years now. I thought I had worked it out. I thought I'd figured it out, and apparently I did not. So this is going to go through my AirPods. So that is the sound quality for today on my side. I apologize again. I will vow to fix this thing in the next week. In the meantime, I want to smash everything around me. So, it's just I get very frustrated. So, all right, here we are, man. I'm sorry, very rude, very unfriendly, unpleasant intro there. I just I'm working on it. So, how you doing, man?
Good. Yeah. Pretty good.
Good. Your football team's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know the exact mechanisms of it, but the rule changed for the NCAA, right? Where they can pay players now in some capacity. And John Cougar Mellencamp gave quite a bit. This is what I heard happened. So the great Bloomington native John Cougar Mellencamp, rock star from the 80s, gave us a lot of money, and that went straight to the football program. And we're 7-0 now. College game day is coming to Indiana, maybe the first time ever. And we built a statue in Mellencamp's honor for his great contribution.
It's exciting. College football in particular has saved my mental health in recent months. I very deliberately, consciously choose to stop looking at dead kids and look at least for a little bit, at some college football every day. And this year, maybe the biggest story so far this year, college football, is Indiana University, the rise of IU as a football power. Now, yes, you are pointing to something that is actually quite important politically that we haven't talked about, that even if you're not into sports is important, I think, which is that, yes, I think it was 2 years ago, the NCAA finally allowed money to be paid to players, to college athletes, right? Through what's called NIL, name, image, likeness, which is essentially a sponsorship program. But the thing is, it's kind of the Wild West. So boosters or any rich person in your town who likes the local college football team can give whatever amount, or almost whatever amount they want, to the school, and the school can do that can use that to pay players. And that's what happened with John Cougar Mellencamp at IU and elsewhere all across the country. So it's now basically a professional sport. I'd say it's like a semi-professional sport. Most of the players are still amateur, but the stars are all paid. All of the good players are paid.
They can make enough money to retire, honestly, before going pro.
Some of them, cases, a few,
yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, who is Deion Sanders' son, the quarterback at Colorado, makes $5 million a year.
Yeah,
and he's the highest paid, though. I mean, but there are several guys who are millionaires, who are college students. But this is a fantastic thing. If you were opposed to this in any way, you are allowed to leave to not be a fan of the show. Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous exploitation. It was a plantation. The NCAA, which, by the way, is hated. The NCAA, which oversees college sports in the United States, is hated by, it's amazing, everyone. Like, there is no one who likes the NCAA. There's no one who even defends its existence. I'm saying athletes, coaches, schools, fans all hate the NCAA, largely because for about 30 or 40 years there, they were overseeing a plantation in which these college athletes were generating billions of dollars for these universities and for their states and for their cities and for sort of college football as a brand and for the networks that broadcast these teams that make zillions of dollars off of that too, and getting not a dime. On top of that, companies, of course, were selling jerseys and hats and T-shirts with these players' names on them, and they wouldn't get a dime of that either. I mean, it was just the most incredible exploitation in the modern American economy. There was really, I can't think of any other industry in which the workers were expected to not be paid. And then it was, people would get horrifically punished, meaning they were expelled from the sport if they did take any money at all. And so it became like and you were seen as sort of a bad person if you figured out a way to get some money from a local booster when you were a 20-year-old kid at USC, the star running back, making millions of dollars for the school every week, and you were getting not a dime, and some guy like bought you a car. I'm thinking of Reggie Bush, who was like maybe the greatest college football player of all time at USC. Yeah, he got punished for it. I think he lost some of his eligibility, but mostly there was a stigma attached to him and to other players like that. People, he's a bad kid because he took money for work that was immensely valuable for other people. Wow. Anyway, so this has all changed finally, and we have a new era in college football, and consequently, also, the sport is now way more interesting and more fun, and it's actually far more. This year and last year, especially, is far more entertaining than the NFL. And if anybody has any interest in football, I strongly recommend checking out college football this year, because they also have a playoff, a 12-team playoff. Makes it all just way, way exciting.
Yeah, they also have kickoffs still, and they still have some more exciting rules that the NFL has gotten away with or done away with.
Yeah. And there's also just a vibe in college football. It's just really different. I mean, there is, even though there's all this mercenary activity with the players and the teams, there is still like an intense sort of college culture. And if you're into that at all, then this is the thing. If you're not, I can understand if you're not into it. I don't blame you if you never went to college, for one thing. But it's quite a fun. It's just pure fun on a Saturday. And I don't think about politics. I don't think about dead kids. I don't think about all the people I currently hate because of their politics on particular issues, and I can just do it. Be inside of it. Be inside of the game on Saturdays. I recommend it. So Colorado, yeah, they're the team. Indiana is the one that's going to win the national championship potentially. Incredible.
And all the liberals here are seething because John Cougar Mellencamp is getting a stadium, and all he ever did was create great rock and roll music that everybody loves, and buy us a football team where we can actually have fun now and not be disappointed in the fourth quarter year after year after year. We've talked about this before, or you've talked about this on the show. I think when you did the Sandusky episode on Unregistered, how much academics hate their local college football team, and how definitionally liberals hate fun and they hate college football because
it's true. It's totally true. Yeah. It's funny. I was in a little mini argument with John Ekdahl on Twitter, he's just this old sort of Republican conservative guy. Not old, but I mean he's been on Twitter as a Republican conservative for years, and I followed him. And he's sort of like lighthearted and fun, so I have no problem with the guy at all. But we had gotten into an argument about whether, I forgot what it was, something had entered the public consciousness about Trump or something. And he said, well, I was just watching College Game Day and they were talking about it on there, so I know it's entered the public consciousness. And I was like, yep, you win. But I was like, only a conservative would know this, would have this data at all. Like college football, as you're saying, totally is associated with, in particular, two regions of this country. It's very much associated with two regions of this country, and it's true, those two regions are far more attached to college football than any other part of the country. The Northeast could care less about college football. The West Coast largely couldn't care about it. South and the Midwest, that is their sport. And that's where you find red states and people with red hats and all those very scary, scary people who want to make abortion illegal in their own state where they live. Yeah, they're college football fans. So that's another reason I like it. They're exotic to me.
Yeah.
And I also love Southern culture, and I do actually love Americana. I love what people called middle American culture, but especially Southern culture. That's my thing. And college football is absolutely central in that. So everybody check it out. If you want to get a slice of what a real America is, go to an SEC game sometime in the fall. Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, where the military cadets stand up the entire game. Love that shit. Army and Navy, by the way, this year, it's the first time they've ever been undefeated, both.
Wow.
And they might play in the Army-Navy game both ranked for the first time, I should say. Sorry, they're both in the top 25 at the same time for the first time in history. And so the Army Navy game, which is this classic game that usually is terrible because both teams are usually bad, is going to be an amazing game. But it'll be interesting this year, especially since we were once again essentially at war. What the Army Navy game will end up representing, but the football will be fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Enough of that. We've now bored everybody who came here for geopolitical analysis, or the weekly dead child count.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to start with?
I was gonna say the libs being definitionally against fun sort of revealed themselves this week when they did not understand at all the Trump McDonald's visit. This was the happiest I've ever seen Donald Trump, just making the fries. And this was like classic Americana. Every single image of it is a Norman Rockwell painting, a real attempt to connect with family and something everybody loves. This is probably the greatest campaigning we've ever seen. And yeah, I've been to McDonald's, I don't know, twice since then. And this is the best thing that's ever happened. Yeah.
What do you order at McDonald's? Because I'm having a hard time understanding McDonald's because I'm
in the morning.
a bi-coastal. Wait, I just want people to know I'm a bi-coastal bougie elite, and I look down on everyone in the middle of America. Have I mentioned that? So anyway, sorry. I'm sorry. Let me just be clear. I love college football. Hate the food choices in the South and the Midwest. I'm just saying. And we can look at some statistics. By the way, again, I love the South so much. But the obesity rate among adults in Mississippi is 60%. Clinical obesity. I'm not talking about fat. I'm talking about obese, meaning you are impinging upon society because we have to make accommodations for you because you're so big. It also means your life expectancy is probably under 50. We're talking about really ill people who are so fat. 60%, more than half the population. Not good. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, I have California family, and every time they come visit, they gawk at how big the people are and how the restaurants operate. How there's troughs of French fries, and they find a Yelp review for a good BLT, and then they get hoodwinked to a place that serves troughs of French fries.
Wait, they go and they gawk, and so I'm thinking there's a market opportunity here. You could do obesity tours. For people from the coasts. People from the coasts fly in. We fly them into Kansas City, Indianapolis, and or to Biloxi, Mississippi, where the really good stuff is. And we drive them around. We show them the really fat people. We take them to Walmart. That's always a key point of the tour, and they'll have a good time. They'll have a good time feeling superior to the flyover state people, and they'll go back home and tell all their friends over lattes in San Francisco about the fat people in Mississippi and Indianapolis. No, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing, and we'll make money doing it.
No, there's a history of this. There's a history of this.
The liberals will love this. The obesity tours.
Well, when RFK Jr. endorsed Trump, he made it a point to note that if somebody was 300 pounds or over 100 years ago, they'd be in the circus. A fat person was a circus attraction 100 years ago, and now it's pretty much standard. So, I mean, there is a history of a dollar to be made here.
So this is actually, it's actually quite a valid pivot or segue into geopolitics, right? No, really. So let's talk about John F. Kennedy again. And this is, what was John F. Kennedy's, probably his most famous domestic initiative? You might not even know this, because it's not, I was actually a victim of it, meaning I was forced to do John F. Kennedy's thing as a kid. What was John F. Kennedy's most
presidential
famous
fitness test? The presidential, that initiative.
Yep. Yeah. He was really, really concerned that that all American young men be fit. Now, what did he say about it? Did he say, I just really want our people to be healthy because I like people to be healthy. When you're healthy, you're happy. When you're happy, you smile. And when you're happy, I'm happy, and we're just going to live in a golden land of happiness because of everyone's going to be physically fit. Is that what he said about it? Is that why he forced? Oh, we had no choice. I don't know if they still do this, but as of the 1970s, when I was in middle school, late 70s, I was in middle school, every kid had to go through John F. Kennedy's presidential fitness program. We had to pass certain tests and do certain numbers of push-ups and sit-ups, and we were timed and all the rest of it and given awards if we did well. And no, of course, what he said, because this was the guy who was possibly the most belligerent and aggressive Cold Warrior of them all, the most fervent American imperialist for sure of them all, which is saying a lot. This is the guy he said, no, we need to make sure we can field an army that can go in and take over places if we need to. We're fighting in the jungles, but the bad guys these days, he said, in the 1960s, they're mostly in the jungles, Southeast Asia, Africa, where the communists, and Latin America, where the communists were, surging. That was the enemy. So we got to imagine doing, infantry combat in the jungle when you're from Indiana. You've got to be physically fit to do that. That is some very hard work. Nowadays, how many kids from Indiana could do that? How many kids from Indiana could fight in Vietnam, Michael? You should be ashamed for your generation.
Mm-hmm.
Or you should see the obesity epidemic as perhaps having a silver lining, which is that, for the first time, everybody, and I mean this is really true. For the first time, America cannot field a conquering army. We simply don't have enough dudes to do it. And I'm not kidding. The Pentagon for years has been saying recruitment's going down and the number of recruits and the quality of the recruits is declining, largely because the physical health of them won't cut it. They can't pass the basic training physicals, even for the Army, which is pretty easy. It's not the Marine Corps. I'm talking about the Army, which I think most of you are relatively healthy. You can get through Army basic training. They've been saying this for years. I've heard multiple generals, Joint Chiefs of Staff people saying the obesity epidemic is a national security threat. Which, of course, well, from their perspective, it is. Meaning, what they really mean is the imperialist security, the empire security threat. It's a threat to the empire. I don't think it's a threat to our security because we have nukes and we have submarines that have nukes and we have the Air Force and the Navy. You don't have to. You can be fat and you can fly those planes and drop bombs on people all day and all night. And I'm not kidding. The drone, we are dominant in drone warfare, which is the ultimate fat guys war game. Fortunately, that for us, that is now becoming the dominant mode of fighting. I mean, everybody's got a drone now. Everybody's killing people with drones now. Hezbollah, Israel, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, the United States. Yemen, I think, had a drone doing stuff. So that's good, but we can't conquer any place anymore. We can't conquer and hold any place. We can't have boots on the ground in any significant number. Iraq was the last shot at that. That didn't go well. And since then, since 2003, what's happened? Half of America has gotten obese. No kidding. Like since Iraq, look at the numbers. If you look at the obesity numbers in the 90s, it's a fraction of what it is now. Since Iraq, I'm not saying there's any causation. I'm just saying since Iraq war, America has literally gotten too fat to wage imperialist wars like that. It's not a joke. This is a major problem for the imperialists in our government and in our society. We're calling for American hegemony globally. I'm like, who is going to staff all those military bases going forward? Who is going to go fight the guerrillas and the insurgents in the deserts of the Middle East or the jungles of Africa? I don't see it. We don't have the boys anymore. And I also think we have less will to do it. I think, don't you agree? I think kids, as far as I can tell, every American boy under the age of 20 plays video games all the time. And that is their primary interest. Now, Call of Duty is, I guess, their most popular, or one of the most popular, which is just reenacting the fighting that we used to do. But do you see? I mean, I don't see any like that. I don't see any patriotism among young men to speak of, and I thank God for that. But do you?
It might come back under Trump, but
True.
Yeah. Yeah, I think young men have been basically demonized and abandoned by society at large. And as the regime gets more woke, it becomes more anti-male. So men are just tuning out of participating in society. And
You're muted. There you go.
check. I'm back. Okay,
Yep,
yeah.
you're good.
Yeah, physical fitness is one of those things, and gainful employment and trust in the system is all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big divide in this election is the gender divide, which I've been wanting to talk about for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. And might as well talk about Black people because that's what this show is really about. I want to
Always.
air an ad since the Harris campaign is doing abysmal with Black men. They cut an ad for Snapchat targeted at Black men, and this is how they believe Black men should be won over.
Hello, ladies. I'm Trey. It's good to be here.
Hey, Trey.
Hey.
So, what do you do and how much do you make?
I work in finance, making six figures.
How tall are you?
6'5".
Okay. Do you work out?
I like to stay active, yeah.
Do you have a plan to vote?
I didn't plan on it.
Listen, you're still muted. Still muted. There you go.
Back there, yeah.
So listen, you didn't mention that this is. We need to take this seriously. This is one prong of her two-prong strategy to appeal to Black men. Okay, one is to tell them, as we just saw, that you won't get laid by Black women if you don't vote for her.
Mhm.
Okay, so the sex. Hey, man, that. The second one is, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do? She's gonna legalize weed nationally. Okay, so listen, those are two prongs that I don't mind.
Mhm.
Like, I can't think of anything more valuable than sex and weed. So if you want to criticize that, I can really see only one reason why you would criticize what a Black woman would say. But go ahead.
I think Black men are more than just their penises and their weed consumption.
I'm not more than that. Why is that? That's not even an insult. You told me that. What are Black men besides that?
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if you have other concerns than weed and sex, or I should say, there are concerns that are forced upon us, of course, that we must shoulder. But I'm saying, as a preference, is there what is it that's better? I'm just people have their priorities screwed up, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm semi serious. When she came out with the legalizing weed thing and everyone made fun of that, listen, I'm the author of Renegade History of the United States, right? I mean, this is fine. This is the final capitulation of the ruling class to allow us that pleasure. They've only allowed pleasures after a struggle, or after they've realized they just couldn't contain those pleasures anymore. They couldn't repress them anymore. So that's prohibition. That's gay sex. That's blowjobs. Blowjobs were illegal in every state until the 20th century, and in many states until the 1990s. And I'm not joking. Sex work is the final frontier, and that's here and there it's had little moments of legalization, little pockets of legalization, but we're fighting on that one. We took a setback. We, meaning like supporters of the sex worker rights movement. But yeah, so I think this is actually not a terrible thing, even though it is being presented this this sort of capitulation by the establishment to the hedonic desires of the people. Let's say that. It's being presented through perhaps a racist lens, perhaps a racist mode of communication. Perhaps she's I don't know. I don't know. Politics in America is so insane now. I can't even make sense of this. So are we supposed to be upset that she thinks that black men are interested in weed and pussy? I mean, we are all interested in weed and pussy.
Well, first of all, it's a false premise. Women won't be attracted to you if you vote for Harris. They'll actually respect you less. They can sense the beta male inside of you that voted for Harris, and it doesn't work out. But also,
oh yeah, of course. I mean, you're talking about reality now. I'm talking
about reality.
I'm just talking about the discourse. But what really happens? No, you will get zero of the what I just said if you vote for Tim Walz. I mean, Tim Walz. I don't think there's ever been a woman's orgasm within a mile of him. Go ahead. What?
But mostly that the entire Harris campaign is built off of sexual shaming. Yeah.
Do tell.
So, I mean, she was a champion of Me Too. She rose through the ranks, going after Brett Kavanaugh. That sort of put her on the map.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
She has introduced herself as somebody who prosecutes sexual criminals, sex trafficking or rapists. So she is sort of continuing the Me Too rhetoric, and she is weaponizing that against Trump. When J.D. Vance was announced, it wasn't any substantial attack on his policy or maybe he's young and inexperienced. No, it's just that he's weird. He's just the kind of guy that you don't want to eat lunch with at the cool kids table. He's toxic. He's just weird. And so
the couch thing.
And the couch rumor, yeah.
Because Tim Walz actually trafficked in that. It's not like there was this rumor and they ignored it. They used that, which was completely made up, of course. Right. Total sexual shaming as a masturbator, which I think probably played into the trope of the alt-right guy in the basement who jerks off all day. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Incel hates women, wants to control women's bodies because he can't get
incel.
laid. Yeah.
Right. The incel masturbator. Yep.
And so, you've got a campaign that is openly hostile to men and trying to beat them into submission. And they are losing historically with men as a result of that strategy. I believe Trump is up 31 points with men.
It's funny. I mean, everything you say would have had some resonance with me 5 weeks ago before I took the blue pill, but now I just hear it differently.
Yeah.
I'm saying I just feel, well, what I really mean is that 2 years ago, I would have been very fired up and about what you're saying and pissed off on behalf of the right wing. But since then, the MAGA movement, the right wing in general, I mean, Trump less so. Trump actually has been sort of the least offensive to me of the entire American right, as a matter of fact. But just as I said, the obsession with drag queens and calling everybody a groomer and a pedophile for 2 years, and I'm still doing it. And of course, they're horrendous on Gaza and just can't kill enough brown babies. And I'm done with them. And so it's sometimes it's hard for me to separate my feelings about MAGA and the American right and the alt-right in general, and their very valid critiques, which is what you're pointing out. They still are making very valid critiques that I actually side with. It's just that those who purvey those critiques, I think, are disgusting, and I want to have nothing to do with them. But yeah, the alienation of the American man, the young American man, is what you're getting at, though, and that's actually the theme of the entire day so far, because we began with college football. And it's true, though. You're right. I mean, and then we move to the obesity epidemic, but that is really those things are very much also about there's a moving away from the center. There's a moving away from the establishment by white men, young men, in all sorts of ways, meaning they're feeling alienated from the core American institutions through years and years and years of the stuff we've talked about on this show and other people have talked about elsewhere. There has been a demonization of masculinity, no question about it. In particular, the kinds of masculinity expressed by young men not in places where college football is popular, but in the places where the dominant formal American culture is established, places where college football isn't a big thing. New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston is where, and Chicago is where American formal culture is established. The government, the major academic institutions, the major media institutions that fill up most of the space with words and discourse and thoughts and ideas that most Americans imbibe and internalize and believe in. Yeah, those places on the coasts that don't like college football really don't like men. They don't like men. They don't like male masculine expression. They like men who are neutered. They like men who are feminist, which means neutered, who are committed to egalitarianism so much they will never, ever express their actual desires and interests in public. Yeah, but the good news is, Michael Weimer, from that, here's the big silver lining. I don't think these guys are going to want to be drafted. I don't think they're going to volunteer to sign up for the army. I don't think, and beyond that, I mean, what I see among American men, the young American men, and I think you would agree with me, what comes with that alienation from the core American institutions is a perpetual resistance to the dominant discourse, to the dominant institutions, right? I mean, there's a growing among young American men, especially, but now it's black men too, I was going to say. Right, it's now all of them. They're less and less and less attached to the American story, the American narrative, being an American patriot, being an American citizen, right? They see the government as the enemy, as corrupt, as fake and gay. And certainly they see the major institutions, academia, Hollywood, as fake and gay. And so there's nothing to sign up for that has the red, white, and blue on it. American men have it seems to me, less and less attachment to the flag, less and less attachment to civic duty and citizenship. And to me, I mean, be really clear, that's all great. That's exactly right. I want that. I'm sorry that it came, at the expense of a lot of men feeling lonely, betrayed, scorned, pushed out, ostracized for being who they are. But I'm also glad that they're not signing up to go fight in Vietnam again, right? I mean, this is what they've done at times, legions of 19-year-old and 20-year-old American men periodically have signed up to go fight in the Philippines and die, go fight in France and die, go fight in the Pacific and die, go fight in Vietnam and Korea and die and mostly kill, more killing than dying, and gaining zero from it. Not a thing. Iraq, all of them. Do you see, I really don't think America, the United States, can ever field an invading army again. I think the days of that kind of conquest and that kind of direct colonial control are over. And I think it's not just the obesity epidemic, but it's also this vast mass alienation among American men from the core American institutions. Is that right at all?
Yeah. Yes. But the thing is, a form of rebellion conservatism is reverting to the old values that valorized male heroic virtues, like
Mhm.
whatever General Patton believed in, or whatever the great men of the past believed in, is a form of rebellion. And I see those ideals coalescing around Trump. And this is what I wanted to mention earlier when you were talking about your split with the right and
Mhm.
the right movement. Totally. Have you given any thought to people like Jeffrey Tucker, James Gentleman, Clint Russell, and I think Dave Smith now? It's behind the paywall, but he's hinting at supporting Trump this time around. That so many libertarians, good principled libertarians, see Trump as principally anti-war, good instincts on caring about human life, good instincts about wanting to seek diplomacy, wanting our institutions to be functional, and seeing that a Harris presidency would be just a Soviet-like level, complete dangerous collapse of our institutions.
I mean, yeah, I think on foreign policy, Trump is clearly preferable, even though he's still terrible, and in particular on Israel. Although I think even on Israel, he would be better. I think he would be better than Harris.
Mhm.
I think he would actually. I have this feeling, I can't really back it up. There's a little bit of evidence to suggest this. I do think that Trump would end the war in Gaza pretty quickly. He has made hints to that effect, and Netanyahu is so in his pocket, and the right wing of the Israeli government is so in Trump's pocket. They're full MAGA. I mean, most of Israeli society now is full MAGA, pro-Trump. They think Trump is their guy, which is very bizarre because, of course, Biden and Harris have done nothing but sort of delay one shipment of 2,000 bombs for 5 days or something like that. And otherwise have told Israel they can do whatever they want. Or allowed Israel to do whatever they want. Yeah, I think that Trump, though, and this is not, I think that he has, and I've written about this, I've talked about this publicly many times since 2015. He has said many, many things that, to me, betray the kind of instinct. And this is what I want to say about Trump and war that I really like about him. This is the thing I like about him the most. And I want people to think about this. When you think about war, just viscerally, just the immediate thought, and we think about maybe specific American wars or even European wars or just wars in general, what's your immediate feeling? What's your instinct, your reflex, right? Is it, that sounds fun and exciting, and we need to do more of that so that we can kill the bad guys more and establish good people around the. Almost no one I know has ever thought that way. That's what like weird sociopaths think, and those are the people who have run American foreign policy for 250 years, and those are the people who are in government. No, Trump, when he talks about war, even he has made terrible war-making decisions, of course, although far fewer than other presidents, but he has. Even when he makes the way he talks about it is the way that we think about it and talk about it. It's the way normal people who are not sociopathic politicians in the American empire talk about it and think about it. He doesn't like it, and he really doesn't like it in, to me, what is a normal way, what is the way that most people think about war, which is just pure revulsion, and a desire to do anything other than make war, to find a way out of war, by any means necessary. That is not the way that, again, the leaders of the government of the United States have thought since the founding of America. And again, I really urge, just one last thing, like urge people to like really think about and read the speeches, the statements by any president about foreign policy and war. And you will see that if you put these people on a couch, on a therapist's couch, they would be deemed to be sociopathic. and it makes sense, right? To want to be the leader of a global empire, to want to be the head of the dominant global military empire requires a level of sociopathy. You have to be very comfortable with killing lots of people if you want to be the president or even a senator, right? That's what it means. That's what being in the American national government has meant for 2 centuries, and has always meant that. Trump is the first person to ascend to that height in the American government who has had the instinct about war that most people have. And I do think, yes, I think because of that, he would be a better president, because I think foreign policy, of course, is by far the most important issue. And he has a better instinct on that. Plus, right, it's true that he didn't start any wars. He didn't start any wars for 4 years. So sorry.
I've got a clip here from Fox and Friends that I think solidifies that in the most bold way he's done since,
Cool.
getting at one of the biggest myths in American history. And this statement that he makes was so good that Paul Krugman wrote a piece in the New York Times recently about how bad it was. So here we go.
So you like kids? Here's a 10-year-old from Tennessee has a question for the 45th president.
President Trump, I'm Daniel, and I'm 10, and I'm from Tennessee. What was your favorite president when you were little?
Who was your favorite president when you were little?
So I liked Ronald Reagan. I thought he was, look, I didn't love his trade policy. I'm a very good trader. I've made some great trade deals for us, the USMCA. That wasn't his strength, but he had a great dignity about him, Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. You could say, there's our president, more than any others, really any of the others. Great presidents, well, Lincoln was probably a great president, although I've always said, why wasn't that settled? You know, I'm a guy that, it doesn't make sense. We had a civil war.
Well, half the country left before he got there.
Yeah. But you'd almost say, like, why wasn't that? As an example, Ukraine would have never happened in Russia if I were president.
I'm dying to know. I want him to flesh out his thoughts about Lincoln. What was he getting at there?
He was why wasn't that settled? Why wasn't slavery settled? Why did we have to fight a war to answer the slavery problem?
Is Donald Trump that based? That
he
has. Do you think so?
According to Paul Krugman, yes, he is that based. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's how this was read. Yeah.
Side note, for those who are curious, I have been convinced for decades, having studied at Columbia University for a PhD in American history, and Columbia University is the preeminent history department, and we produced the major scholarship on 19th century United States, and in particular the Civil War and Reconstruction. Eric Foner was our leader, but we had a whole Columbia. Most of what Americans think about the Civil War comes from Columbia University. I'm not kidding. That's where the historical research has sort of been generated primarily about that subject. And I was a graduate student and a professor in that very department for 15 years. So, and I'm going to say to you, and of course, everybody at Columbia and all the discourse that comes out of Columbia has always been, of course, that this was the one virtuous war, and this was, America's greatest heroic moment, and the whole cause was absolutely just, and there was no number of Confederates dead that would make it, not just. I have known for a long time, since pretty much after I left that university, that of course the Civil War was unnecessary, and then of course slavery was going to wither away, probably within a matter of years, probably not even decades. And there's plenty of research on this, and I can point people to that research. But also, just if you look at the global context, that's what was happening in every country. Slavery was being abolished here, there, and everywhere. Cuba was the last to abolish it. They did it in the 1890s. The United States was one of the last countries to abolish slavery. So they were just part of a trend, of a wave. But there were many, many reasons why slavery was going to fail as an economic institution in the South, and why the South would have to reform in that way. And there's also, we know that maybe more importantly, right, and this is probably what Trump was getting at, and I think maybe what you're suggesting, the real reason that the North went to war against the South, and was of course not about slavery per se. It was what Lincoln and the Republicans at the time said over and over again. They weren't worried about what woke lefties in the 20th century, 21st century would think. They said, no, we don't give a shit about black people. A few did, but the vast majority said, no, it's not about slaves and black people and saving anybody. It's about having one unified, giant national government that we control. It's about power. Having half the country split off or a third of the country split off like that simply diminished the power of the American national government. And these were people, men, who were born and raised hoping and wishing to become the heads of that government. And they saw the Confederacy, the Southern secession, as cleaving off a massive section of the power that the United States could wield. And also, it turns out, isn't this shocking, everybody, that the great leaders of the imperialist movement in America, who called for conquering Cuba and the Philippines, came right out of the Republican Party of the 19th century, the Abraham Lincoln Republican Party. And that they too also became the progressives. The progressives and the imperialists all came out of the Republican Party of the Lincoln age. Abolitionists were the most fervent of the imperialists and the progressives. So that is the lineage of the American liberal establishment. It goes right back there. And yes, it had nothing to do with helping people, saving people, any genuine feeling about Black people or the oppressed. No, it was about power. And it was about making the United States into a global superpower. Every leader of the Republican Party at the time, from Lincoln to Sumner on down, called for the expansion of American power globally. They wanted to go elsewhere and create the American experiment all over the world because they believed that they were chosen by God to expand freedom and democracy and America everywhere. That's the origin. Maybe Trump is getting at that, maybe not, but Lincoln, the reason he went to war, the reason he would not accept any kind of compromise was that he needed, and his people, the leaders of the Republican Party who were aiming for hegemony over the US government, they needed one unified country on this landmass that they could use to wield immense global power with. So that's why they went to war. Mm-hmm. And Trump he's not like that. He's actually not. He's the first president who's not a megalomaniac in that way. It's funny to say that about Trump. He's clearly like comedically narcissistic. I just find it hilarious that every other sentence he has to say, and I did this great thing, and I did this wonderful thing, and I am this great. That doesn't bother me, but he's not actually interested in global power the way that John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, James Madison, James Monroe, all of them ever since. John F. Kennedy and Johnson and Nixon and Reagan and all. He doesn't have that lust for the American empire. And I think that the wealthy and powerful people in this country, there's less and less lust for that. They used to be a religion among the American elite up through the age of Kennedy, through the 60s. Since then, it's just been diminishing and diminishing and diminishing with every lost war, every corruption scandal in the federal government. People have been less and less interested in going out there and conquering the rest of the world and shining light for humanity across the globe. It's kind of, again, the theme of tonight or today. But so I think that Trump, again, he's the first to not have that religious zeal for American imperialism. That's why they have tried to, in some cases, literally kill him. That's why they have tried to take him down. I have maintained since 2015. When they heard him say the things about NATO not being necessary, and he said that over and over again at debates during the primary in 2015, that's when the CIA, I believe, put up the red flag and said, we have to begin an operation to take this guy down. And I think there was an operation within the CIA against Trump that was launched in 2015, right after probably the South Carolina primary debate, when he said, again, that NATO was unnecessary. He said that repeatedly in 2015. And that's when you saw all of a sudden this talk about him being a Russian asset, collusion with Vladimir Putin. Trump is a danger. Trump is a fascist. Trump must be stopped. TDS begins, I think, with that, with 2015 and Trump declaring that I'm not like all these other presidents. I'm not like those guys. I don't need to extend America everywhere. I just want America to be strong and prosperous here, the place that we all know, the place that Americans know, on this landmass. We don't need to go to Iraq and Vietnam and North Korea and everywhere else. We can stay right here. I think that's what America First really does mean to him. And I think that his Israel exception, which is a massive, horrific exception, I have a feeling it's not that deeply held, actually. I think it probably largely comes from Jared Kushner and probably from the wealthy, powerful Jews who have surrounded him his entire life working in Manhattan real estate. As you said, I think last week, there's no doubt that Trump was dealing with Jews all the time throughout his career as a real estate magnate in New York City. That's who owns many of the buildings, is Jews in New York. I don't think, though, I really just don't feel it. I hear other Zionists talk, like Gentile Zionists talk, like Douglas Murray, Sam Harris, yada, yada. I mean, some friends of mine, etc. Trump doesn't sound like them. He doesn't have that. I don't think he really cares about this idea of a Jewish homeland in Palestine.
Yeah. And Trump is also uniquely positioned in that he has both Jewish grandchildren and Lebanese American grandchildren.
Who's that?
Tiffany Trump. Tiffany's is married to a Lebanese, and he's using that hopefully to get some ground in Michigan. And he's doing, I think he's leading with Arab American voters this time around.
Wow.
Yeah. Who are actually mostly Christian. They're not mostly Muslim, but I think he is uniquely positioned to broker peace in this.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too. Because he has so much leverage with Netanyahu.
Yeah,
Netanyahu needs him and is indebted to him. Trump did some major stuff for Netanyahu when he was president, moving the embassy to Jerusalem and launching, most importantly, the Abraham Accords, which is just a way to get the corrupt, the Arab kingdoms, the dictatorships, to side with Israel and screw the Palestinians. That was Trump's initiative, although really it was definitely Jared Kushner. I mean, everyone knows that Abraham Accords was Jared Kushner's idea. It was his project. He oversaw it. He's the one who did the Abraham Accords. And that's why I don't know if Jared would be as powerful in the next Trump administration. I hope not. But I think does that make sense to you, or does that sound right, that Trump he's not that committed to Israel the way that people like Jared Kushner are?
No, he's pragmatically committed to it. He loves his daughter, he loves his grandchildren, and he loves his family, but he doesn't really get all the propaganda behind it. He just logically thinks, oh, this is our ally, might as well serve them, you know. So I think if they're behaving in a way that goes against American interests, he'd be the first person to reel him back in, like Reagan did, like the presidents of the past have.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And I mean, just again, instincts, right?
Oh,
people's first thoughts. Go ahead. Yeah.
On those instincts, DC is called Hollywood for ugly people. And I think we can't underestimate how much DC attracts nerds, powerless nerds who feel powerful by being so close to the military. So that's the types of people that we have right now. I think, yeah, in the past we might have actually had great generals and great men who had imperial ambitions, but now what we have is nerds who want to feel powerful, so they feel powerful by commanding armies. I think that's your Lindsey Grahams, that's all of your neocons, and I think that's your Kamala Harris. And I think there's a reason why all these straight A Democratic students who have progressive ideals, who spend all their time with their nose in books and memorizing all the correct answers, by the time they get to DC, they ally themselves with the Cheneys, and they pride themselves in NATO, and they pride themselves in strengthening our alliances and bullying countries that don't have democratic standards and their ideas of human rights.
Wow.
Yeah, and Trump doesn't need that to feel powerful. Trump comes from wealth. Trump has built an empire of business. Trump has, he's independently successful in his own ways already without this. So he doesn't have that lacking in his psychology.
So during World War One, when Europe was made into a killing field, horrific, right? If you know anything about World War One, it was probably arguably the most barbaric war in human history. Maybe even, I think, might even be worse than World War II in certain ways. And there was this hunchback, deformed, 4'8" weird guy at Columbia University who was a graduate student, I think, at the time. I
thought you were talking about Churchill.
Right, no. And his name was Randolph Bourne. Randolph Bourne. And every American should know the name Randolph Bourne, and they should know his story and his history. When this was happening, World War I was happening in Europe, and America entered the war in 1917, and just unbelievable slaughter, the likes of which no one had ever seen, and the use of mustard gas and trench warfare, but against machine guns. So whole lines of men would stand up and march across fields against machine guns and get mowed down by the hundreds or thousands in a day. They had thousands dead in a day. And Randolph Bourne was this graduate student in political science at Columbia University, kind of like I was 60, 70 years later. And he was the student of John Dewey, who was the most famous and important progressive intellectual in the country, philosopher, and a major intellectual within the progressive movement. And Randolph Bourne was horrified to find out that his mentor, his professor, his advisor, the great John Dewey, was not just supporting the war, but enthusiastically supporting the war, and saying that the war will bring about great social benefits to humanity. That already, John Dewey said, we have men who are no longer drinking in the streets. They are now doing calisthenics and joining the army. Prostitution was basically ended. Every prostitute in New York City and Philadelphia was locked up during World War I. That was a great thing, John Dewey said. People there, he said there was a moral prophylaxis about war that is wonderful, because people become disciplined. They are forced to become disciplined rather than allow themselves to indulge in the hedonic pleasures, as I said earlier. So Randolph Bourne is like looking at this guy, and he's like, this cause I've devoted my life to, progressivism, making the world more efficient and orderly and just and equal. How is it supporting this grotesque, barbaric war over in Europe? And he wrote a series of essays. The most famous is called The Twilight of Idols. And I wish that every American would read this and read about Randolph Bourne and John Dewey. He engaged in a debate with John Dewey, mostly in the pages of the New Republic, about this. And Randolph Bourne set out to understand why progressives, the smartest people, the most advanced humanitarian people, they were all academics, they were all scholars, they all had PhDs, smartest people in the country, were supporting enthusiastically this war, this hellscape in Europe. And he came to the conclusion, similar to yours, Michael Weimer, that these were a bunch of fucking nerds, but in the worst possible way, which is that they were interested in, Randolph Bourne said, primarily ordering and managing and regulating human beings. Like, that's what they're into. The people who are progressives, the people who want to make an efficient society, they really are into managing, regulating, governing other human beings. Now think about that. How many people do you know who want to govern other human beings? Again, it's weird. It's really weird. Once again, I'm going to say, your politicians in any country of any politics are sociopaths. And this is why everyone should be an anarchist. Because you must be sociopathic to want to be a head of state. Because that requires killing and incarcerating and controlling the freedom of human beings. Randolph Bourne said, the progressives who want to make New York City into the cleanest, most efficient, most orderly city on earth and give welfare to the poor so that they can become good citizens who are loyal to the state. This is what he said. This is what the progressives said. When they get their welfare, they will become loyal to the state and more likely to sign up for the army to go fight in their wars. The welfare state becomes the warfare state. Randolph Bourne said about why progressives liked war. The draft, the progressives, John Dewey, the draft was the greatest thing about the war, they said. People go look this up. Go Google progressives, John Dewey, conscription. You'll see that almost all the progressive intellectuals during World War I loved the war largely because of the draft. Because it was forcing everyone to be civically minded, public objects, devotees of the state. They're serving their country. It is now a collective. Individualism was dead during World War I. Progressives loved that. And the progressives loved the idea of having a map on a big table and moving armies around like a risk game, overseeing, doing war games and thinking about where we should invade here and where we should have a population there and where should we put our people over there and where should these people live and what country should that be called and where should the border in this other place be drawn. Imperialist thinking. Again, really weird. So few people have ever wanted to do that, to determine how people in China and Latin America and Southern Africa live. But those are the people who end up in government, in the federal government, in the United States of America. It makes sense, doesn't it? That the sociopaths would be attracted to the sociopathic jobs. Again, this is why we must be anarchists, but the nerdiness that you were getting at, the nerdiness, and you see it in John Adams way back in his memoirs when he was young, before he became a politician. He used to go on and on about these fantasies he would have. He wrote in his diary about these fantasies he had about ordering the world, about deciding who should do what job, who should have what function in society, and which country should be allowed this or that power, etc. I mean, incredible sort of puppeteer fantasies. But this, again, I'm going to say this, and it's not just American politicians, it is politicians generally. These are the people who want to run a state. States aren't nice things. You have to be sociopathic to some degree to want to run that thing. So yeah, I think we're seeing it once again. We're seeing now these nerdy guys who sit in the middle of an empire, this global hegemonic empire with no threat to themselves, in a townhouse in a suburb and outside of some city in America, with an awesome internet connection, and they are able to influence people and say, use their nerdiness to advance the empire. But the reason they're into this is, again, they have that thing that only particular sociopaths have, which is this desire to manipulate other human beings and to order the world around them according to their own interests. So if we put them on a shrink's couch, they would be deemed as sociopathic and pathological.
You want to talk about the Amy Wax story? University of Penn law professor, back in the news again. She's been in and out pretty much every year. Somebody brings up Amy Wax's work and whatever op-ed she wrote in 2017. But this time she's being sanctioned and removed from her chair at UPenn for, I guess, observing that Black students aren't always at the top of the class, or what are the specifics of the allegations here?
So this is, so Amy Wax, I'm a big fan of Amy Wax. and I'm very angry that UPenn has sanctioned her. She hasn't been fired. I think she still has tenure, but she lost, I think, essentially about $500,000 worth of salary from what they did to her in terms of the punishment. I forget exactly all the machinations, but it works out. She lost her research money. She lost her chair. She lost a bunch of, basically the money that she was owed as a faculty member at Penn was taken from her. Because she has said a series of things over the years that are, and I will say this, that are technically racist. And I think it's great, actually, that she was the first professor at a major university in America to publicly state technically racist views. I mean that. We need to have a talk about real racism. And I mean real racism, like the good old-fashioned scientific racism from the 19th century. The belief that human beings are divided among different biological races of people that are distinct, and among which there are hierarchies, that there are some races that are better, superior than others. Some races are more intelligent than others. Some races are more virtuous than others. Some races are more criminal than others. Races of human beings, and this is biologically determined. There is no amount of education that you can do to change these biological facts among people. Amy Wax has said many things that are that.
Well, I don't think she's ever gotten that far. I think.
Yes, she has. Yes,
nah.
Yes, she has.
I mean, she hashes this out with Glenn Lowry like every year, and going over her statements there with a fine-tooth comb. I don't think she points to a hierarchy of races. I think she just points to a number of disparities that happen and wants the openness to investigate why those disparities exist, and doesn't believe that they exist because of institutional racism. And she's open to the Charles Murray belief that there's a 20 to 40 or even 80% genetic factor that might account for these, which is really super mild. I mean, I don't really see any actual racists in the academy like this. Like, I see, yeah.
Okay, I mean, so she has. I've seen her
Yeah.
get interviewed by Glenn Lowry many times, and yes, in those interviews, for some obvious reasons, she sort of hedges what she has said elsewhere. But no, I mean, if you go look at Alex Kashuda, Alex Kashuda.
Yeah.
She's like an alt-right podcaster and has a YouTube channel. And Amy Wax was on her show about 2 years ago. No, I mean, she says, if racist means noticing differences, then I'm proudly a racist. But she has said many things like this. She has said that there are biological components, of course, to the reason why her graduate students, her law students, are not as good. Her black law students are not as good as her white law students. I mean, I don't want to debate. I mean, maybe we have to. I thought you knew this. Or I thought you agreed with me on this, that Amy Wax, I mean, really, honestly, and I like this about her. As I'm saying, I want to have a discussion. Let's look at all the data. Let's have this debate. We are not allowed to even have the conversation. So anti-racists and non-racists are actually, there's a disservice to them, to us, I would say. We're never allowed to actually go through it. Let's hear it. Let's hear the argument, and let's allow us to actually knock it down. And maybe we can't knock it down. Maybe it's right. Maybe it's true. And I mean that. Maybe it's true. I don't know, because I've never been allowed to really get into it.
Well,
And
I mean,
this
yeah.
is
I haven't, again, like, I haven't seen any tried and true racists in the academy, really. Like, what they always go to is, if they even get this far, is there might be some cultural factors that lead to these disparities, and we need to investigate them. They don't believe that people are doomed by their birth to their outcome. I think they believe certain things like nutrition and television hours as a child could contribute to these gaps, but I've never heard anyone conclusively allege that it's all their nature, or that's the determining factor.
Okay, I mean, we can't really litigate whether Amy Wax has said anything technically racist here. I just urge people, I guess, to look at her stuff. I have seen and heard many statements from her that I thought were the first time that I heard what I consider to be like honest to God, old school scientific racism. But no, I'm quite sure she has said there are biological elements to all this. So I think she qualifies. But anyway, my point though about this is that we're not allowed to talk about it. So, there's a stigma, not a stigma, there's a taboo, there's a ban on any serious discussion at all about the claims made by racists over the last 150 or so years in the academy. We just can't have that conversation. I would like to have it. I'd like to actually go through it. And at some point, I'd like to have on my show or some show, some real conversation with serious academic racists. There are a few. They are anonymous, and they're largely in hiding, but they are out there. And I actually think I'm surprised you're denying Amy Wax as a racist, because it's pretty
like
clear.
Steve Saylor and Charles Murray. They never go all the way there. Like, the only people who really go all the way are like provocateurs who lead like reactionary political movements that go nowhere. Like I have the Jim Goad thing about racists or white supremacists. Like, show me somebody who believes that whites are innately superior and that because of that they should rule over people. Like I don't see anybody who asserts those claims. The people who believe in scientific racism will say East Asians are the superior race and whites just happen to be in the middle. Like, and that whites have deep flaws like self-hatred and egalitarianism. Like, they don't actually think that they're the best race out there. Really, I don't see that anymore.
Okay, so you really need to you really need to watch Amy Wax's latest interview with Glenn Lowry. No, it's super clear. She says that there needs to be in America she calls it the Anglo-Protestant culture needs to be dominant. And
yeah, but that's not racist. That's not racist. There's nothing racist about that.
Anglo?
Yeah.
What's Anglo?
Anglo. All right. The people who settled and conquered this country were Anglos. And so like that culture.
No, she's saying that is superior. No, she's saying that's superior, not because of like right of heredity or like right of conquest. She's saying we should have one culture, that Anglo-Protestant culture should be dominant because it's superior to other cultures. She lays it out. I mean, that's precisely what she says. Now, again, I'm not morally offended at all. But I actually I think it's exciting for that to be proffered. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Honestly, how is that not technical racism?
All right. To say the Anglo-Protestant culture is better because white people have superior genetics would be the full scientific racist argument. To say Anglo-Protestant culture is superior because it gave us ideas about human rights that we all enjoy and love, and that it gave us things like the First Amendment and the Magna Carta, and that for American democracy to make sense, you need to preserve the culture that created those things to still be dominant. That's a different argument. And I don't think she makes the white people are genetically superior, which is why they created a superior culture argument.
Okay. Well, she also has many times argued that IQ and race are intimately connected. So, I mean, put the two together. Like, she's saying Anglos have created a superior culture and non-Anglos are biologically less intelligent. How? It seems pretty clear to me. But but again, I didn't want to talk about racism or academic racism or whether Amy Wax is a racist. The point here again is that they shut her down. And she's not stupid, by the way. She's not. If she were stupid, then I'd be for shutting her down. Racism, to me, the problem with it mostly is that it's so dumb for the most part. I mean, racist arguments are usually just very dumb, cheap, sort of shortcuts, easy ways to explain social phenomena. Oh, it's because those people are black or those people are white. That's why this thing happened. No, they shut her down, and she has things to say, and there are real thinkers who agree with her and believe that there are biological difference among races of human beings, and that is why we have had certain social phenomena because of the biological inherent predilections of certain races. They have tended to behave in certain ways because of their biologies. That's why Haiti looks like Haiti, because of the biology of the people who live there. Definitely, this is what they're saying. The reason Curtis Yarvin said this at our event in Chicago.
Well,
right?
He didn't explicitly say it. He didn't explicitly say. He said demonstrate a scientific test that can separate culture from genetics, and I'll entertain which is which.
Great. I want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Again, I don't. So that's the problem. Penn, the Academy, the Ivy League, the United States of America, they don't want to have this conversation. And I do. And I guess that's because I'm attracted to controversial ideas.
Mhm.
So anyway, I guess we should wrap here. We are, oh no, wait, we got to do a little thing about Israel.
Okay.
What
Sinwar or
what were you thinking? You looked shocked when I said that.
I was gonna say we should mention that Jeremy Lafredo's coming home, that
Yeah.
he's on a flight back to the United States. And it doesn't look like there's some giant Israeli intelligence sting on the gray zone yet. So it seems we're okay. We're in the clear for now.
I was shocked. I mean, we'll see, but I was sure that they would try to plant something on his phone or do something with his phone. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yes, he has been released. He came. I think he's already back.
Mhm.
I saw him. He liked my post on Twitter, so I guess he's back. But so that's good. But it's amazing, this war, or whatever you want to call it, slaughter, genocide, ethnic cleansing, whatever it is. There's so much happens so fast. It's like last week's atrocity is already forgotten. But the fact that Jeremy's free made it easier. But since that happened to him, was it 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago? I mean, it's just been arguably, I don't know the numbers, but I mean, at least some of the worst, most brutal attacks by Israel on Gaza. So, but Sinwar, what did you make of that? I mean, there's this amazing video that the Israeli drone took of him after he had been hit by, I think, a tank shell in this apartment that he was using to fight from. And he's all alone sitting in this chair. I'm sure everyone's seen this video. And then picks up a stick, I guess, and throws the stick at the drone.
Well, one of his arms is like severed. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's all alone, which also was interesting. I mean, not even any other bodies around him. And this was in Rafah. And so, there you go. That's the data that everyone agrees on. Everyone agrees that that's what happened. Okay, so it's funny. The Douglas Murray and the pro-Israel side over here in Israel, the Israeli government, the IDF, have been crowing about this as like evidence to show that he was a coward, which I don't quite get, and that he was pathetic, that he ends up with one missing an arm and throwing a stick, and so therefore we're supposed to think that he was pathetic, which, even if that were true, I don't know how that benefits them politically. He wasn't pathetic. That's certainly not the problem with Sinwar from their perspective, is it? But the rest of the world saw it as a heroic last stand by a valiant freedom fighter who was not surrounded by hostages, who was not surrounded by human shields, who did not have Palestinian children strapped to his legs to stop Israeli snipers from killing him. He was all alone out in the open. He wasn't even under tunnels. He wasn't even in the tunnels. He was out in the open, above ground, fighting with a rifle in his hand in military fatigues. And so we have yet another situation where the tiny little coterie of pro-Israel public intellectuals and journalists and government officials say one thing, and the whole rest of the world, 99.9% plus of the world, looks at that and says, you're completely wrong. It's the opposite. And so the circle of pro-Israel people is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And everyone else is getting louder and louder and louder. And I don't know where this is going to end up, because the people with the tiny little circle of pro-Israel supporters, they control all the nuclear weapons, and the 82nd Airborne, and the U.S. Navy, and the U.S. Air Force, and the Israeli military. And so it's become this tiny hyper-militarized fortress surrounded by everyone else. And I don't know where this ends up, except with a whole lot of killing on one side or the other. But what did you think of Sinwar?
I heard it described, like I read the video described, and normally I don't watch these snuff films, but I did see this one, but I read it described as like heroic and everything. And without any audio or anything, it did look kind of anticlimactic. It didn't look like he made any cool like faces or anything. He just see a guy like this and throw a stick, and then the drone gets him. It just looked tragic, I guess. In that, to me, what this signals is Israel keeps assassinating leadership. So they keep assassinating anybody who's in charge of things that could be met with diplomatically. And so that's what made me sad about it, is like this campaign of total annihilation and ensuring that diplomacy is completely impossible. But I don't really have any personal emotions about it other than just sadness at watching somebody with his arm cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last thing, because we got to go.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I guess I might lean on the side of pathetic, but if I see somebody who's pathetic, that doesn't elicit like gloating on his grave. It elicits like sympathy. It elicits like, it elicits some sort of empathy towards that person.
Yeah. So what did I say earlier about politicians?
Yeah.
I said they all have to be at least partly sociopathic.
Mm-hmm.
Sinwar rose to power within Hamas for leading the campaign of identifying and executing informants, collaborators with Israel within Gaza. So other Palestinians who were working, and this is a big thing that's been happening forever. Israel would pay off or bribe or extort people in Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinians, to work for them, and provide crucial intelligence that led to the bombings of people, etc. So Sinwar was the one who led the campaign to kill all the informants, which he did, and so there was a lot of murder going on in that way. Now I understand, and I mean this totally, like, understand needing to kill informants in that situation. You have to. I mean, there's no question about it. But also, I would never be able to do that, and most people I know would never be able to do that. And I'm sure that Sinwar, well, we don't know exactly what he ordered, by the way, on October 7th. We still don't. What were his actual orders about what to do to the fighters? Did he order them to kill civilians? I actually doubt it, and we have zero evidence whether he did or not. There is a fair amount of evidence, quite a bit of evidence, to suggest that he ordered them to attack military targets. Didn't happen entirely, but we don't know. Anyway, I'm sure that Sinwar did many things that were sociopathic. But as the figurehead of a resistance to a colonial occupation, what do you expect? I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect to that kind of occupation, which culminates in a siege of basically a large city, which is what all of Gaza is, basically one large city. It's that size. It's the size of New York, essentially, or New Jersey. When you surround it, a city full of half of the population is children, and you bomb it. This is the sixth war in Gaza in 16 years, in which they've bombed from outside this civilian trapped population. I mean, an air force dropping bombs on a city with no air defense, just day after day for a year. And this is just the latest. I mean, that's just the last year. it's been 76 years of this kind of brutality. And of course, they're going to act like barbarians. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, for all of his problems, this is what he said. And it was a great thing he said this on the Ezra Klein podcast. He said, if I were born in Palestine, if I were born in Gaza, and I grew up in that world in which Israel controlled everything, and one of my family members was murdered and bombed, and my sister who has cancer can't get health care because she's not allowed to leave Gaza. If October 7th came around and I had the opportunity to do something against the Israelis, he said, I can't say that I wouldn't do it. I can't say I wouldn't do what happened on October 7th, which was to kill whoever's in front of you. For some of the fighters, I think that was true. Of course not. I mean, the thing that I tweeted, the first thing I tweeted on October 7th was, I can't remember the exact words, but what I said was, if you were born in Gaza, you would be supporting the terrorists. Or I said something like, if any American were born in Gaza, they'd be supporting the terrorists. There's no question about it. So, all right, how's that? Dead children wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Leaving on a high note, but we got to go.
Yep.
So, if you want to hang out with me and Michael, God knows why you would want to after this, but go to patreon.com/unregistered. Become a patron of this show. If you just want to support this show and keep it going, that's a good reason to do this. Become a patron, $5 a month. That's all you got to do. If you do want to hang out with us, you also get to go to Unregistered Live as a patron, which is our meeting on Zoom right after Unreported every Thursday night right now. Highlight of my week. We've been doing it for years. It's a lot of fun, and we get to know we get to learn who's watching this show. So please do that. Become a patron. Keep us going. And yeah, I'm really ready. I don't know. It's something broke in me over the last week or two around Israel and Gaza, and I'm actually no longer that interested in arguing with pro-Israel people anymore. Partly because they make zero arguments that make any sense. But it's just about stopping this. It's just so urgent. I don't know what else to say. Like it's many, many children every day. It's many, many women. There was this latest massacre, I think 2 days ago, just bodies of women laid out on the street, just dozens of women killed in one airstrike. It's just, we just have to stop this. I don't know what else to say, but sorry to be a bummer. Sorry to be repetitive and boring about this. It's just the worst thing I've ever seen. And yeah. All right, man. Sorry.
All good. And
thank you guys. Go to work.
Yep.
Become a patron. That's the main thing. Just become a patron.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll discuss on the other side. Peace. See ya.
Thanks. Peace.